Imagine commanding the most powerful army on Earth, an army that had conquered kingdoms, crushed rebellions, and expanded an empire across 3 continents. Now imagine giving that army an impossible order. Not to attack another kingdom, not to besiege a fortress, not to invade a foreign land, but to fight the sea. According to one of history's strangest stories, thousands of Roman legionaries marched onto a beach, raised their weapons, and prepared for battle against the ocean itself. When it was over, they reportedly gathered seashells
as trophies of victory. For nearly 2,000 years, people have laughed at the story. Historians have debated it. Movies have repeated it. Books have treated it as proof that one emperor had completely lost his mind. His name was Caligula. But here's the question almost nobody asks. What if that famous story never happened the way we've been told? What if one of the most bizarre events in Roman history was actually one of its greatest misunderstandings? Tonight, we're separating legend from history. The emperor who fought the sea. Myth or history?
Long before the world feared the name Caligula, he was simply a little boy following his father through Roman military camps. His real name was Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus. He was born in AD 12 into Rome's most famous family. His father, Germanicus, was the empire's greatest general. Roman soldiers admired Germanicus. The people loved him. Many believed he should become emperor. Wherever he traveled, his young son followed. The soldiers adored the child. They even dressed him in miniature military armor, tiny breastplate, tiny shield, tiny sandals, especially tiny military boots. The boots were called caligi. Soon, every legionary had the same nickname for the smiling little boy: Caligula, Little Boots. No one could have imagined that this cheerful child would one day become the most controversial emperor Rome had ever known. Life inside a Roman military camp shaped him. Every morning he watched disciplined soldiers preparing for war. He heard stories of distant battles. He saw victory celebrations. Military life became normal. Power became familiar. And danger was everywhere. Because life inside Rome's imperial family was never safe. In AD 19, everything changed. Germanicus died unexpectedly while serving in the eastern provinces. Almost immediately, rumors spread across the empire. Had Rome's greatest general been poisoned? No one could prove it, yet millions believed it. For young Caligula, the loss was devastating. He had lost not only his father, but the one man capable of protecting the family. The empire suddenly became a much more dangerous place. The emperor was now Tiberius. His reign had grown increasingly suspicious. Political trials multiplied. Executions became common.
Accusations of treason spread fear throughout Rome. Caligula watched members of his own family disappear one by one. His mother was exiled. His brothers died under tragic circumstances. Every year, the circle around him grew smaller. To survive, he learned a lesson that would stay with him forever. Trust no one. Speak carefully. Hide your true thoughts. Because in imperial Rome, the wrong word could cost your
life. Against all odds, the frightened boy survived. Most of his rivals did not. And within a few years, that frightened survivor would inherit something almost unimaginable: the Roman Empire itself. But becoming emperor would prove far easier than remaining one. When Emperor Tiberius died in AD 37, Rome erupted with celebration. The old emperor had ruled for more than 20 years. Many citizens were exhausted by political fear. Now, a new face appeared. Young, charismatic, and carrying one of Rome's most beloved family names: Caligula. People poured into the streets. Temples offered prayers of thanksgiving. Markets buzzed with excitement. The Senate quickly recognized him. Even the army welcomed him enthusiastically. Few Roman emperors have ever begun their reign with so much goodwill. To many Romans, Caligula wasn't simply another emperor. He was hope itself. During his first months in power, Caligula appeared determined to reward that trust. He released political prisoners, reduced some unpopular policies, organized magnificent public games, distributed generous gifts, honored the memory of his parents. The city celebrated. Ancient writers describe crowds cheering his name wherever he appeared. If history had stopped there, Caligula might be remembered as one of Rome's finest rulers. But history had other plans. Caligula became desperately ill. Some believed he would never recover. The entire empire waited, prayed, wondered if Rome's new golden prince was already about to die. History often remembers this as the moment everything changed. Only a few months into his reign, Rome's beloved young emperor suddenly collapsed with a mysterious illness. No one knows exactly what caused it. Ancient writers describe a severe fever. Others simply say he came terrifyingly close to death. Across the empire, people prayed. Temples filled with worshippers. Sacrifices were offered to the gods. Rome feared it was about to lose another emperor. Days passed, then weeks. Some believed recovery was impossible. Yet against all expectations, Caligula survived. The celebrations returned. But according to later Roman historians, the man who emerged from that sickbed was no longer the same. Ancient writers claimed he became colder, more suspicious, less forgiving. Some described him as cruel. Others called him unstable. Some even declared him insane. But before we accept those claims, we need to ask an important question. Who wrote those stories? Almost everything we know about Caligula comes from historians who wrote years, sometimes decades, after his death. Men like Suetonius and Cassius Dio. Neither witnessed many of the events they described. Neither was an eyewitness to Caligula's most famous actions. Instead, they relied on official records, political gossip, stories repeated across generations, and accounts preserved by Rome's elite, the very elite who had every reason to hate him. This creates one of history's greatest puzzles. Was Caligula truly descending into madness? Or were later writers exaggerating the flaws of an emperor they despised? Modern historians remain deeply divided. Some believe his illness may have affected his personality. Others argue political propaganda transformed an unpopular ruler into a monster. The truth may lie somewhere in between. One thing, however, is beyond dispute. Relations between Caligula and Rome's Senate deteriorated rapidly. He openly mocked powerful senators, publicly humiliated wealthy nobles, ignored traditions that emperors before him had respected. To Caligula, the Senate existed to obey, not to advise. For Rome's aristocracy, such humiliation was unbearable. Every insult created another enemy. Every execution increased resentment. Every public embarrassment pushed influential men closer together. Some whispered behind closed doors. Others simply waited, because they believed sooner or later the emperor would make a fatal mistake. Yet Caligula wasn't focused on senators. His attention had shifted elsewhere, toward the edge of the known world, toward an island that Rome had tried and failed to conquer: Britain. To understand the famous story of the emperor who fought the sea, we must leave Rome behind, travel nearly 1,000 miles north, across mountains, across rivers, across the provinces of Gaul, until we reach the windswept coastline facing the English Channel. Across those waters lay Britain, an island that fascinated Roman leaders for generations. Nearly 100 years earlier, Julius Caesar had crossed the Channel twice. He won battles, forged alliances, but never established permanent Roman rule. Britain remained unconquered. For any emperor, completing Caesar's unfinished mission promised everlasting glory. Around AD 39 and 40, Caligula personally traveled to the northern frontier. This was no ceremonial visit. Ancient sources describe a massive military buildup. Legions arrived from across the empire. Auxiliary forces joined them. Engineers constructed camps. Supplies filled enormous warehouses. Ships gathered along the coast. Thousands upon thousands of soldiers prepared for something extraordinary. Modern historians believe this force was almost certainly connected to Britain. Perhaps Caligula intended a full-scale invasion. Perhaps he planned only a demonstration of strength. Whatever the objective, the preparations were real. Rome had assembled one of the largest military forces of his reign. Everything appeared ready. Then, everything stopped. The invasion never happened. No surviving Roman document tells us exactly why. Perhaps storms made the crossing impossible. Perhaps logistics failed. Perhaps intelligence reports warned against proceeding. Or perhaps Caligula changed his mind. No one knows. And it is precisely here, on this lonely coastline, that one of history's strangest stories begins. Thousands of legionaries waited. Their armor glistened beneath dark skies. Warships floated offshore. Military standards snapped in the wind. Caligula gave an order so unbelievable that people are still talking about it, nearly 2,000 years later. Did Rome's greatest army really prepare to fight the sea? Or has history misunderstood this moment from the very beginning? The Roman army stood ready. Thousands of legionaries waited in perfect formation. Behind them, rows of warships rocked gently against the shoreline.
The soldiers expected only one command: advance, cross the sea, invade Britain. Instead, history tells us they received an order unlike any ever given by a Roman emperor. The ancient historian Suetonius claims Caligula ordered his soldiers to face the sea. Trumpets sounded. Military standards were raised. Then, according to the story, the emperor commanded his army to prepare for battle. Not against Britain, not against another army, but against the sea itself. Imagine the silence. Seasoned legionaries, men who had fought fierce Germanic tribes, veterans who had crossed rivers under enemy fire, now staring at the endless ocean, waiting for an enemy that never appeared. Then came the strangest part. Ancient writers claim the soldiers marched toward the shoreline. Some stepped into the surf. Others struck the waves with their spears. Not because the sea could be defeated, but because the emperor had commanded it. And in Rome, disobeying an emperor could mean death. When it was over, Caligula reportedly instructed his soldiers to gather seashells. Thousands of them. The shells, he supposedly declared, were the spoils of victory. A triumph over Neptune, the Roman god of the sea. It is one of the most extraordinary stories ever told about any ruler in history. And for centuries, people accepted it as fact. But history is rarely that simple. Because the closer historians looked, the more questions they discovered. Neither Suetonius nor Cassius Dio witnessed this event. Both wrote years after Caligula's assassination. Both relied upon earlier sources that have since disappeared. And neither explains why an experienced emperor would suddenly order such an absurd spectacle. That silence has puzzled historians for generations. Today, many historians believe the famous story may not be literal. Perhaps the soldiers were conducting military exercises. Perhaps the seashells were collected during a religious ceremony. Perhaps the event celebrated the completion of coastal fortifications. Or perhaps the entire episode was exaggerated by political enemies eager to portray Caligula as insane. Because after his death, those enemies controlled the story. Let's separate what we know from what we merely believe. Fact: Caligula assembled a massive army along the Channel. Fact: an invasion of Britain
was likely being prepared. Fact: the invasion never happened. Legend: that Caligula genuinely believed he was conquering the ocean. The evidence for that final claim is surprisingly weak.
Could the seashells have been collected? Certainly. Could the order have been symbolic? Possibly. Could later historians have transformed an unusual military ceremony into a story of madness? Many modern scholars believe that is entirely possible. And if they are correct, then one of history's most famous tales may also be one of its greatest misunderstandings. But while historians continue debating what happened on that shoreline, Caligula faced a far more dangerous battle. Not against the sea, not against Britain, but against the powerful men inside Rome, who had finally decided their emperor had to die. Empires rarely fall from foreign invasion. More often, they begin collapsing from within. By the winter of AD 41, Caligula had become increasingly isolated. The crowd still came to the games. The empire still obeyed his orders. But behind the marble walls of the imperial palace, something far more dangerous was unfolding. For nearly 4 years, Caligula had humiliated Rome's most powerful families. He mocked senators publicly, ignored centuries-old traditions, confiscated fortunes, ordered executions. Whether every accusation recorded by ancient historians is true remains uncertain. But one fact is undeniable. He had made powerful enemies, and powerful enemies rarely forgive. Some feared for their lives. Others feared for Rome itself. To them, removing the emperor no longer seemed impossible. It seemed necessary. But assassinating a Roman emperor was almost unthinkable. The emperor's personal bodyguards were known as the Praetorian Guard. They protected the emperor, escorted him through the city, guarded the palace, and stood only a few feet away every single day. Caligula was untouchable. If they turned against him, no palace wall could save him. Among their officers was a veteran commander named Cassius Chaerea. Ancient writers claim Caligula delighted in mocking him, insulting him before other officers, questioning his courage, turning a respected soldier into the target of public humiliation. Whether every insult truly happened, we cannot know. But history agrees on one point. The plan was simple. Wait. Watch. Strike when the emperor was isolated, and pray the rest of the guard joined them before loyal soldiers could respond. If they failed, every conspirator would die. If they succeeded, Rome would awaken under a new emperor. The date was 24 January, AD 41. To everyone watching, it appeared to be another ordinary day. Caligula attended public games. Officials surrounded him. Crowds cheered. Musicians played. Nothing suggested this would be the final day of his life. After the celebrations, the emperor began walking through a narrow passage beneath the palace complex. It was a familiar route,
one he had taken many times before. He believed he was surrounded by men sworn to protect him. Instead, several of them had already decided he would never leave alive. Without warning, Cassius Chaerea stepped forward. His sword flashed. The first blow landed. Chaos erupted. Other conspirators rushed in. Steel echoed against stone. The emperor stumbled. Within moments, more blades struck. Ancient writers disagree about exactly what happened next. Some describe dozens of wounds. Others tell the story differently. But they agree on the outcome. Caligula, the man history remembers as the emperor who fought the sea, was dead. He was only 28 years old. His reign had lasted less than 4 years. News spread through Rome with astonishing speed. The emperor was gone. No successor had been chosen. No clear plan existed. For a brief moment, the greatest empire on earth had no ruler, and no one knew what would happen next.
As panic spread, the Praetorian Guard searched the imperial palace, hidden behind a curtain. According to ancient tradition, they found a frightened man. He had spent much of his life overlooked, ridiculed, dismissed by Rome's elite. His name was Claudius. The soldiers made a decision that would change history. They proclaimed Claudius the new emperor. Not the Senate, not the people, the army. Once again, Rome learned where real power truly rested. Not in speeches, not in elections, but in the loyalty of soldiers. With Caligula dead, his enemies controlled the narrative. Stories multiplied. Some may have been accurate. Others were exaggerated. Some were almost certainly invented. And among all those stories, one became unforgettable. The emperor who declared war on the sea. Today, nearly 2,000 years later, historians continue asking the same question. Who was Caligula? Really? A mad tyrant? A misunderstood ruler? Or something in between? The truth is remarkably, profoundly difficult to uncover, because almost every surviving account was written after his death, by men who belonged to the very class he had alienated. That doesn't automatically make their stories false, but it does require caution. Modern history demands evidence, not simply repetition. We know Caligula assembled an army near the English Channel. We know preparations for Britain likely took place. We know the invasion never happened. But beyond those facts, the evidence becomes increasingly uncertain. The famous battle against the sea may have been symbolic, misunderstood, or transformed by hostile writers into the perfect story of imperial madness. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all. History is not only shaped by those who live it, it is shaped by those who write it. The waves continue to crash against the same coastline they reached nearly 2,000 years ago. The Roman Empire is gone. Its emperors have become legends. Yet one story refuses to disappear. The emperor who fought the sea. Did it happen exactly as ancient writers described? Perhaps. Was it exaggerated? Quite possibly. Can historians prove that Caligula literally believed he had conquered the ocean? No. The evidence simply isn't strong enough. What survives instead is a reminder that history is rarely simple. Heroes become villains. Villains become legends. And sometimes, the most famous story isn't the most accurate one. Caligula ruled for less than 4 years, yet his name has survived for almost 20 centuries. Not because we know everything about him, but because we still argue about him. Perhaps the real battle was never against the sea. Perhaps it was against memory itself, against rumor, against propaganda, against time. So the next time someone tells you that a Roman emperor declared war on the ocean, remember this. The sea leaves no records, only waves. History leaves stories. And stories can change with every generation. Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't whether Caligula fought the sea. It's whether we have ever truly understood the man behind the legend. If you enjoyed this journey into one of history's greatest mysteries, subscribe for more forgotten civilizations, unsolved disappearances, lost empires, and unbelievable true stories from the past. And tell us in the comments,